Crossing Realms Conference is coming this September 19th and 20th to the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Tickets to this landmark event are on sale right now at Eventbrite. The powerful speaker lineup will cover topics from Bigfoot, UFOs, and aliens, so you will not want to miss attending this amazing 2-day inaugural event. Again, that's the Crossing Realms Conference, this September 19th and 20th at the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Please mark your calendar and get your tickets before they vanish. Space is limited.
Yes, we do not want the tickets to vanish. Thanks to everybody for coming on in. It's Beyond BMR with the lovely Krista. And I'm going to tell you right off the start of the show, I really love Krista. She's on vacation. And she's down where she can't get internet service. And she came home just to sit in with the show, on the show with me. How about that? Everybody give Krista a big applause. And don't forget to subscribe to Krista and Brandy, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Of course, I'm bigfootmichiganrob. Please subscribe to me if not already. Texas Front Porch, Monica Rounds, Our Paranormal World. Donnie Show with Says Stuff, Paranormal Paul. Truth or Tinfoil, Josh Turner, Paranormal Roundtable. Yes, thanks to everybody for coming on in. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. You know the podcast, you know the platforms. We're there. We do appreciate that. Really excited about the conference, of course. Thanks to everybody. And don't forget that the Super Chat is open, a great way to help support what we all do around here. You also can become a BMR pirate. Arr, mateys. Join today. Join the many. Join the few, depending on your point of view. You get a picture of good old BMR in the chat room, sporting a bandana. Don't forget my books. Bigfoot Michiganrob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1, Book 2, all found on Amazon. Simply type Bigfoot Michiganrob in your Amazon browser. Thanks right off the bat, T-Bone. Well, T-Bone, thank you, brother. T-Bone has been a pirate for 12 months. Thank you for the love and support, T-Bone, of the show. You're always greatly appreciated, my friend. And he just gifted 5 more pirates. T-Bone, 5 more gifts. Thank you ever so much for that. T-Bone, you rock. Love you. We got a great guest, Kevin Kehne from the Arizona Forest, going to come on and talk a little forest people, little Sasquatch. And it's going to be a great show. Before I bring him up, of course, I'm going to bring up my lovely Krista. What's happening?
Not a whole lot. Happy Tuesday. I'm lazy. I'm lazy this week. I'm on vacation, so it's nice.
Yeah, you're on vacation, and thank you for, making a little trek, I know that's not just because of me. You got things going on. I get it.
Right, yeah.
I had to throw that in there.
What he didn't throw out there, guys, is I bought a new vehicle.
Yes,
I have to do all of that, but then, that's a hot mess, too. That's another whole story.
I was letting you just say that. I just wanted to make it all about me. No, I'm kidding.
It is all about you, Rob.
Of course it is. Everybody knows that. Just kidding, as everybody knows that, hopefully. Yes. Hit that like button, everybody. And again, please subscribe. Hey, check out, go to Miguel, Sasquatch Theory, because he dropped a show on his channel featuring the Blondes and the Booze, Krista, Brandy. Go check it out after this show, of course, and give them a like, leave a nice comment. They did a great job. You guys did a great job. I really thoroughly enjoyed that.
Thank you. We spent a weekend with Miguel, and he's an awesome person in general, and he's got a great channel, and he's also a speaker at our conference. So come and meet him. Yes, come and meet him. Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, it's a perfect segue into a person I just met today I met him for the first time online. We were talking back and forth. Great researcher. He's got a YouTube channel, which is posted in the links. He put a group together to talk about his expertise. Well, I don't want to say expertise, but his research in the Magoyan Rim, if you will. And I'm gonna bring him up right now. Without further ado, I'm gonna bring up Mr. Kevin here. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hello, and hello to the BMR family. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. And again, thank you for coming on, taking time out of your day. I must say that living in Arizona, I don't know if I'm jealous or in between. I hate to say that we're jealous, but boy, I've never been to Arizona. I have to put that on my bucket list. Because look at you in the background, beautiful background you have there.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I live in Strawberry, Arizona, instead of like where I used to live in Apache Junction, Arizona, and so I'm in the mountains now instead of the low deserts, and retirement's great.
Yeah. I think he might be lagging.
But just to correct you real quick, am I lagging a little bit?
A little bit.
You're just a little bit. You're fine. I mean, we just gotta wait for you to catch up. Just about half a second off. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Don't worry.
Okay. But yes, I was just going to correct you. There are no experts in this subject. So,
no, I always say that.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm just.
Yeah, I don't throw out that word expert at all because there are no experts, and someone claims to be an expert. I'm like, oh, okay. It just, somehow filtered into my brain. So, can you hear me? Got me? We all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, like with most guests, especially when they're a first timer on the show, we're going to talk some Bigfoot, the forest people, as you make mention of. What got you involved in this this field?
Well, it's kind of a two-step process. I had my first experience in the Boy Scouts back around between 1980 and 1982, somewhere in there, that just kind of rocked my world. But really didn't do much with this. I mean, I was always a believer, always interested in the subject, but I had life involved and raising kids, and just didn't have a lot of time to dedicate to it. I'm a big outdoors enthusiast, hunting, used to do solo backpacking, just a massive outdoor enthusiast. And 2017 is when this really kicked off for me. It had to do with a family camp out up on top of the Mogollon Rim at a place that I now call Squatch Camp. Just had my world rocked because I found a footprint and had knocks and just a lot of simple stuff. I'd been running around the forest banging on trees, not knowing what I was doing because I was watching this TV show, and forgive me, I can't remember the name. It was Not Finding Bigfoot or Finding Bigfoot or something like that.
Oh boy,
but,
yeah. Heaven forbid.
Yeah, so not knowing anything, was out banging on trees and that kind of typical stuff, because I didn't know anything, and until we had some stuff happen, and I ended up contacting somebody from the BFRO. We went back up there for 3 nights, had my world rocked, had his world rocked, and since then, since August of 2017, I've put in probably close to 15,000 hours, boots on the ground out in the field.
Wow. So let me ask you then, I mean, what was your first experience then when you were out in the field? And I will say this, though, before you continue. It must be great to be retired and be able to do the boots on the ground and really spend some time.
Oh, it is. Now with that being, because I am an outdoorsman, and with that being said, I've got a beautiful wife. I've got 4 children. I got 21 grandchildren. I've got a lot of reasons to be at home. And, when this first started off, it just like it was unbelievable what I was experiencing, and I just had to keep going out and had to keep going out and had to keep going out, and one thing led to another, and here I am.
That's a lot of grandchildren too. Boy, I bet they keep you busy too.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah,
I was. No, I said I was thinking. Yeah, that's your. With all the grandchildren, a beautiful wife at the home, and now your passion is into the forest people, Sasquatch. So again, if we walk it back a little bit, what was one of your? It could be anything, right? What was one of your first experiences where you said to yourself, "This is something well worth looking into firsthand"?
Well, outside of what happened when I was in the Boy Scouts, and that was just, middle of the night, big rock being thrown, footsteps, typical, somebody's walking around out there type stuff. Without getting, too deep into that, so when I went back out after my family camp out and we found the footprints and had the wood knocks and that. Some of the stuff that was going on, I couldn't come up with an answer for. I'm a very analytical, atypical type of person. I'm a nuts and bolts kind of guy. And, when I'm sitting there and, my buddy that I was up there with, he's having a sighting. I can't see what he's looking at because the trees in my way. This is middle of the night. We're sitting in the dark. Almost a full moon, and what he's seeing is being highlighted by the light behind him, and I can't see what he's looking at, but I'm getting off to my right. I'm watching you. Everything is okay. You have nothing to worry about, but I'm watching you. And it was just this deep, stern feeling that I was getting, and it was a little unnerving. But at the same time, it wasn't fearful. I was trying to process what was going on, and then I saw fluorescent green eyes, what we call the eye glow. And I was like, can they light their eyes up green? And he's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Now, mind you, this guy had never had much of an experience. He was with the BFRO for, I think, like 9 years before him and I had hooked up. And that night was the first time he had ever had a sighting. And, so that was the first night. And, we were up there for 3 nights, and it was just this high strangeness, getting the typical, hearing the clack sounds and hearing the footsteps and a little bit of, I know the outdoors, and I'm like going, this isn't computing. I don't understand what's going on here. And so when I left that trip, like I said, we were up there for 3 nights, and I drove the 126 miles back to my house. Never turned the radio on. Had the cruise control set exactly at the speed limit. But I was just so lost in thought, trying to process everything that I had just experienced. And, so I get home and I'm trying to explain, some of this stuff to my wife, and she's kind of like rolling her eyes like, yeah, whatever. And I was like, I got to go back up, and 3 days later, I was back up there for almost 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it just kept piling on and piling on and piling on.
Wow.
But, okay, so to give you an example of the high strangeness, so it was I don't remember if it was the second night or the third night. And from where we were sitting, it's now an area that we call the room. It's a little opening behind some trees. And it's an area that they like to go into, and I could hear them over in there. And so I told this guy, I said, I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna walk over there. And he goes, well, be careful. I said, I'm fine. And so I walked over that direction, and I get this very, very intense feeling that I've gone far enough not to come any closer. So I turn around, I'm like, well, I'm getting this feeling not to go any closer. Well, are you going to come sit back down? I said, nope. And I took 3 more steps. After I took those 3 steps, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move my head. I couldn't move any part of my body. I could think fine. I could speak fine. But I could not move, so I'm telling him, I said, I can't move. I'm paralyzed. He says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I just can't move. And then the individual who I refer to as Indy, he kind of, did the eye glow thing. And, he was about 30 feet away from me and just big, massive outline. And I was like, oh, there you are. I'll go sit down now. Boom. I got let go. I turned around and went and sat down. I was like, what the?
Right.
Wow.
Being paralyzed, what do you think caused that?
The truth to the answer is I haven't got the slightest idea. Getting into theories and hypothesis, which is just a very expensive word for a wild ass guess. I think it has to do with somehow, they have the ability to make a neurological connection with you. And I firmly believe that's what's going on when people talk about getting zapped and that, is that they're basically somehow neurologically linking up with you. But yeah, they locked me, and it's not the last time I've been paralyzed. I've been frozen in my tracks many times, and never is it anything that's like, oh my God, I'm in fear of my life. That I was in danger. There's always this feeling of peace and love.
Sure.
I don't know how to explain it other than peace and love that they're either portraying through this neurological connection or telepathy, or I don't know how you would broadcast an emotion onto somebody else, but they have that ability.
So let me ask you this then, okay? Because when you're out there in the forest and you come across a Sasquatch and you get these feelings, I know you just mentioned you can't explain it, but is it a message that you get verbally? Is it an image you get? Or is it just something that you just, like you said earlier, can't explain? There's got to be something that is coming from something outside of a regular mammal of the forest. It's coming from the Sasquatch.
Yeah. Mind speak, telepathy, however you want to describe it, is an absolute 100% authentic, real thing that goes on with them. I didn't understand that at the beginning. It took me, I don't know, probably close to a full season to go, okay, they are communicating with me telepathically. But other than that, how they do it, I don't know. And, the biggest thing I can say with this phenomenon is they do what they do when they do it.
Well, have you had like a spoken word verbalized in your mind where they said, hey, Kevin, thanks for being a friend to us? Or, I mean, I just made that up, but do you hear that in your mind? A verbalization, a vocalization inside your mind?
Yes, and it's sometimes it's very subtle, and other times it's pow right in your face. They don't speak the way that we do. They don't use filler words. Very little expression. What's the word I'm looking for? Build up words. It's very, 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 very simple. For example, one of the last communications I had from one that I've known from the beginning of this, she told me, "You are in family." And it's not very often that they'll speak a whole lot to you. They're very short communications, but like I said, there's no filler words in it, and sometimes I have to sit there and what did you say? Yeah, because of the way it comes across, sometimes it's difficult to get the full meaning behind what it is they're trying to portray, and then other times it's blatantly obvious what they're saying, and it's I guess dependent on the individual, what the conversation is going to be. And and I use the word conversation very lightly, because I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I'm not sitting out there, "Hey, Indy, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing great today. I'm glad you're back out here." And "Okay, well, I'm glad you're here visiting." And the communications aren't like that. And a lot of times, a lot of people, what kind? Do you ever ask them questions about? And yes, I ask questions about all kinds of stuff. Very rarely do I get a clear answer. I have, but a lot of the times it's, for example, one of my first questions that I asked them over and over and over, and I think they got tired of me asking the question. So, but my question was, because you live in the deserts, you live in the mountains, you live in the swamps, all kinds of different climates, hot, cold, blah blah blah. How is it you guys deal with all these different climates and temperature ranges? And for the longest time, I didn't get an answer. And how I got the answer was not by any type of mind speak, spoken language, or anything. It was an example. And what it was at a place called Crazy Town. It was cold out. It was probably about upper 20s, maybe 30 at best. I've got face wrap on. I'm all bibbed up, hand warmers in my pockets. And all of a sudden, I cannot feel any temperature. The hand warmers, I couldn't feel any temperature on my face. I pulled my scarf down, my face wrap down. I could not feel any temperature whatsoever. The guy I was with, excuse me, he says, "Hey, can you do that to me?" Now, what he said is he felt it from the top of his head go down to the bottom of his feet, and he went temperature neutral also. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that. But, so if two of us experience the same thing, that pretty much gives you an answer. And what I took from that is they are not affected by weather, by temperature. Is that the case? I don't know. That's just my interpretation of an event that happened.
Here's one thing that I don't know if you've asked this. I would tell you, if I had a open communication with Sasquatch, one of the things I would ask, and maybe you've asked this, I would ask, because I need to know one day in my lifetime, my question would be, where did you come from?
Right.
You ever ask that?
Yes, I have, over and over and over and over and over. The best answer that I've got, because it kind of started off, and I'm not going to make any referrals to anybody else or any other names that other people up in the Pacific Northwest may have for these people. But I kept asking them, is this what you call yourself? And over, there was no answer. And typically when there's no answer, the answer is no. Um, and finally they got up, got tired of me asking this question all over again. And they said, no, not we are the people.
Wow.
That's the best answer I've gotten. I have some hypothesis, that I've worked on a little bit here and there, and I'd ask them about this, and they said, "You're on the right track." Basically, you're going in the right direction. Does that mean I'm close to an answer? Absolutely not, and I don't think I'll ever, until he comes and sits down in the chair and says, all right, turn on the cameras. I'm going to give you a blood prick. I'm going to give you the DNA. I'm going to give you everything you need to know right here. I don't think anybody's ever going to get the answers. That's just my humble opinion. And anybody, and I mean anybody who says, I know who they are, or I know what they are, or I know, walk away from this. This is too complicated. It's very simple, but it's very complicated at the same time. And I mean, me and the guys, the Arizona 4, we're out beating the ground. We have every possible conversation that you could imagine. Who are they? What are they? And we got to the point where it's like, we don't care. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter where they come from. We just cherish the interactions that we have. But being who we are at the same time, you can't help but, well, I think this might be, or I think this might be. But we're all of us, we're not on the same page, but as far as that stuff, and that's, I guess, the beauty of the Arizona 4. I mean, we are lockstep in everything that we do. We are lockstep with our experiences. We are lockstep with the conversations that we have. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different, ideas and hypotheses. And that's what keeps us, as grounded as we are, is, as soon as we, I'll just use myself for an example. I start drifting a little bit off to the right, come back center, and that's what we do to each other. We stay focused on what we have in front of us. And that's the only way that we'll be able to continue to operate, because the moment you start, I know, you don't.
Yeah, I would never say I know, I know, and I would never use the word expert. What I do want to know is where they came from, of course. For me, that's the biggest mystery of all time. But what I appreciate is you guys, Arizona 4, you go out, you're having some good experiences, learning what you're learning, and kind of having these conversations. So, and I respect that. I think that's pretty cool. I think everybody listening would kind of like to have that. What can you talk about as far as, have you seen any of these creatures or forest people? I use all sorts of words: Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever.
Yeah.
So what have you have
Yep.
you guys seen anything or anything you can share or elaborate on?
Let me pick one. I'll give you my first daytime sighting, October of 2017. Was at Squatch Camp. I was sitting there. The other guy I was with, he got up. Well, he gave me an article to read, and he got up and went into his van to put his bibs on, and I'm reading this article. And what I can describe, and I'm not saying this is what happened, this is just the sound I heard, and I ascribe it to something very large was in a tree. The branch broke and it fell out of the tree. I'm not saying that's what happened. That's just what the sound was, how my mind put it together. And I was like, what the hell was that? And I stood up and I turned around and I'm like, and so I kept calling for this guy, and and I turned to look to see what was taking him so long. When I turned back, there was nothing there. And, so he comes out and he goes, what's going on? And so I told him what had happened. He goes, so you had a sighting? I'm not ready to say that yet. So I what I did is I had marked exactly where my feet were. I rubbed them into the ground. So I had a bearing, and I wanted to sit there the next night, around the same time frame, because I had to make sure that, because the sun was just beginning to set down below or down into the trees, so could it have been a shadow? Could it have been, a trick of the light from the sun's, 1,000 different things it could have been. And so the next day we did the complete recreation. I put him where I saw it. We shot it with the laser rangefinder at 78 yards, I think is what it was. About a 9-foot individual. But after the next night, I stood there for like 20 minutes prior to 20 minutes after, so I could see how the shadows were being cast as the sun was starting to set, so I can rule everything out. And, the bottom line is that was my first daytime sighting. And what I saw was an individual between 8 to 9 feet tall. I couldn't get the width of the shoulders because of the trees. But when the guy that I put over there for the recreation was 6'1", and this dwarfed him as far as, girth. And, so that was daytime sighting number one. I can keep going. I can keep going. This is one I don't talk about a whole lot, but this is a very interesting one. I was at Hilltop, another one of our locations. Been out there for about a week. I was on a almost 2.5-week trip, sitting out there by myself, 4:30 in the afternoon, and I look over into this little dense area of trees that we refer to as the Ardennes. And I hear a branch break, and that's why I looked over there. And lo and behold, there's somebody standing there. And mind you, there's nobody within about 15 miles of me. And so I'm looking, and I see you, and and there's about 60 yards away, and he starts doing this. And I said, well, I'm going to walk over to you. And I got up and I started walking over there. Now, mind you, there's no ground clutter. It's an area that had a fire before, so there's not much as far as anything on the ground. So I don't have to look at the ground. I'm looking at him, and I'm walking straight towards him, and I get about 25 yards away from him, and he just poof.
Vanished.
He froze up.
How do you process that?
Oh, there he is.
I don't know. How do you process it? What do you do? What do you do with that kind of information when you see it? It's one thing to talk about it and trying to explain it, but when you have something directly in front of you, and he wasn't a big one, he's probably 6.5 foot tall, 7 foot max, not bulky, kind of slender build, vanished into thin air.
We hear those all the time.
How do you process?
Well, you keep the word process, and I'm not getting into what happened to me. You can always look up my account. A lot of people have heard it, but I always say hard to process because I had an encounter in 2018, and what I saw, what happened to me, to this day, it's still hard for me to process. This thing was 9 foot tall, and it just yelled, screamed, and roared at me and my girlfriend, and I was frozen in time. The entire day turned to darkness. I mean, it was the middle of the day, but I was looking through a filter. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And my girlfriend fell in the boat and I turned around, it's gone. And here's the thing, they looked human, then it seemed to take on a different shape and it was gone. And let me tell you something. When you see something that you think, because I thought the Bigfoot probably did exist well before I got into this Bigfoot and cryptids thing. But when you see something that big, 4 foot around the gut, the word you use, process, to this day, I can't process. I couldn't even put it together in my head until several days later. And then when you see something, as you said, just to disappear, poof, disappear,
Mm-hmm.
that even adds another element. So let me
Well,
ask you. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
you keep going because we're lagging.
Just real quick. Yep. We don't have a frame of reference in our mind for this stuff. You know, I guess maybe if you were a little person, you know, a dwarf or something like that, you'd be used to seeing individuals so much larger than you. But when, you know, when you're the average human, you don't have, you know, a frame of reference. You don't have, you know, your mind doesn't know how to deal with it.
Sure.
You know, when I see the big one, you know, the first time I saw Indy, you know, I was just like, geez, you know, just short of maybe 12 foot tall, you know, I'll say 11 and a half foot tall. The barrel of his chest, I mean, it was just massive, you know, and I just briefly saw him walk by. Just absolutely massive. If I had to guess, I would say 1,800 pounds or better. You know, this guy could sit down and eat an elk in one sitting.
Wow.
You know, yeah, just absolutely massive. And going through the you know, through the thick of the forest, making no more noise than a butterfly. You know, how does that happen? You know,
Right.
I don't know. You know,
A 1,800-pound ballerina in the forest.
I couldn't imagine anything that large.
No
Seriously.
way.
Seriously,
I
that's
was big, but it wasn't that heavy. I don't, like you said, I couldn't process it.
Yep. You know, I guess you and I are on the same page.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Rob and I are on the same page because one of my questions I have down to ask you about is Rob had talked about his encounter and it was such a negative encounter, but yours are positive. What makes you, what do you think why some people have such negative encounters and some people, you know, such as yourself have good ones? And that's the same with Dogman too, because I've heard of people having, you know, decent, okay encounters with Dogman, but then yet some people's are terrifying. And you know, what are your thoughts on that?
Here's where a little contention in the group arises. My personal belief is that 90% of the time, yeah, and I'm saying 90% of the time because I'm kind of giving Chris a little bone there because he believes that it's possible there's some bad ones out there, and I'm not saying it's not possible. I am just under the impression, because of my experiences, you know, starting back when I was in the Boy Scouts, what I thought was a horrific experience that, you know, we were being assaulted, but you know, the psyche of the human mind, we immediately want to assign anything that goes bump in the dark as bad. Anything that we don't understand is dangerous. And kind of stepping over that boundary, misinterpreting exactly what might be going on. Now, are there situations where somebody might have a really bad experience? I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen. I'm not going to say that there's not bad ones out there. But what I am going to say is my personal opinion is that it is absolutely the human psyche misinterpreting what's going on. and I say that because my very first experience, we had a rock like this thrown at us. And it landed right behind me. It got thrown probably about 40 feet to cover this drainage. And then hearing the heavy steps coming down and then going back up, and and this kind of behavior going on all night long, and then a tree getting snapped, and scout leader shooting around in the air, and and then hearing wow, very easily I could say that was a bad experience. Well, the only reason that was a bad experience is because I didn't have the slightest understanding of what I was experiencing. And that's just Kevin. That's Kevin's thoughts.
Sure.
Is that where the Arizona 4 stands? No, that's just where I stand.
Right.
Is it possible that there's bad ones out there? I suppose. I just I don't put a lot of credence in that. Are there other entities out there that are bad and do bad things? Oh, I absolutely feel that 100%. Just I'll give you an example of that.
Go ahead with your example. We're just lagging. That's fine. I'm fine.
Right,
give us an example.
Yeah. Family camp out. We were at Hilltop, and mind you, most of my family, including my grandkids, have had experiences and sightings and had gifts given. But my grandson, who was 15 at the time, he wanted to spend a couple extra nights out with Papa. I was like, right on, man. We'll do that. And so the first night we slept in the tent. Second night we were going to just sleep on the cots. Had the truck all completely packed up. So all we had to do was get up in the morning, roll up the sleeping bags, put the cots in the back of the truck, and head out. And just as the sun started to set, I get, leave now, danger. I'm like, what do you mean, danger? Leave now, danger. And my grandson looks at me and goes, Papa, what's going on? And I said, we need to get the hell out of here. The entire atmosphere changed. It kind of like it went into a grayscale. It immediately put me in combat mode. I was ready to do harm to anything that came in the area. And so he rolled up the sleeping bags and packed up the cots while I stood guard. Loaded the truck. We hauled ass out of there, and it was about 12 miles, somewhere between 9 to 12 miles away when everything settled back down. Was that the forest people being that way? No. What was in the area? I don't know. Had my grandson not been there, I probably would have stuck it out. Just for the experience. But I'm not going to put my grandson at risk.
Sure.
Yeah.
honestly,
what was in the area, I don't know, but it was something that
I was just going to say it could have even been, a natural animal that's local, not necessarily, that it was just giving you a heads up about. I think that's amazing that it warned you with your grandson.
I think.
Well, they've warned me about about local animals before.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I will say this. I think with any creature, human being, animal, tiger, a bear, Sasquatch, Dogman, ghosts, whatever. I think like human nature, you're going to have your entities, your physical beings, paranormal beings. Some are good, some are bad. I believe that's with everything that we come across. And it's just some people come across negative encounters all the time, and some come across great ones. Like you've come across some great experiences. I've always said this, and I say this on record. I personally do not consider Bigfoot the friendly forest giant or the friendly forest person. But that's okay. I'm not. It's just because of what happened to me. But I've had many more accounts, much like yourself, where everything has been fine and dandy. But then I asked the question, to people, would you have your 5-year-old babies left alone in your yard if you knew Sasquatch were on your property? I don't think it's a good idea.
No.
That's kind of the way my thought process is. What do you think?
Me? Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it.
Really? Okay. Well, no, that's a great, honest answer.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. No, I respect it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I've had some dealings with them and my very young grandchildren. Absolute trust. And, you know, and that's something that took a little bit to develop, is a level of trust. And, you know, me showing I trust them and them doing things, you know, in return to show that they trust me. I have absolutely no reason to believe that any, you know, I'll put it this way: as much time as I've spent out there, and if they were bad, I wouldn't be here. As much time as I've been out there and had my grandkids out there, and you know, and the experiences that they've had, if that was the case, trust me, I would not be taking my grandchildren into a threat. I feel more comfortable with my small grandchildren in the woods than I do with them being in their own school.
Wow.
Humans? No, we're assholes. Sorry for the language, but you know.
Well, no, hey, listen. No, you're fine. You're fine. Hey, listen, I tell you what, I will tell you this. I'm more afraid of humans than anything in the woods if I'm out in the woods. I kind of, unfortunately, I'm more afraid of a person on foot. I tell you what, I'd rather have a Bigfoot come up in the back of my tent than some stray person, you know, walking around middle of the night in the woods. That would be pretty creepy. You know, would you agree, Krista?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely would. Just an FYI, it's getting ready to like storm like you wouldn't believe here. Yeah. So if I lose you, that's why. Like it's thundering and lightning. I can't believe you guys can't hear the thunder.
I can't right now. Will you guys continue on? I do something for a quick second. I'll be right back. And Chris, if I lose you, I can keep going.
Sure. So I do have a question for you. What are your thoughts on, have you encountered any dogmen out there?
Not that I can speak of. You know, that one incident I was telling you about when I was told to leave because of danger. Yeah. I kind of hypothesized that, you know, maybe that was what was in the area, but you know, I just don't know. You know, they gave me the warning to leave. I left. I've never seen anything in the area that would even lean towards dogmen. You know, are they out there? I don't know.
Right.
You know, in the areas that I'm at, I just don't know. I've never heard of any reports of dogmen. You know, I know, you know, you start getting more farther north and northeast of where we're at, and you know, you start getting into, you know, Navajo reservation, and you know, and you know, dealing with you know, their bad medicine men,
right?
You know, the bad medicine on the reservations, but you know, as far as I just don't know. I doubt they're in the area.
Yeah, just curious, because
who knows?
You know, what I find amazing too, and I think it's really, really cool, is, you know, me myself, I go out to the woods too, but I might spend a night or two out there. You go for 2 weeks at a time, and you know, that's where maybe the difference is, like where they know you. The ones that I go out to, you know, just for the weekend, you know, they don't know me. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense. And that's why maybe I think they're more apt to communicate with you, and you know, that kind of thing, because they know your intentions. They know, you know, you're there all the time.
Well, and when I first started doing this, I've, kind of using the Jane Goodall method of, habituation. My truck always in the same spot. My tent always in the same spot. I always wore a red shirt. And that was started by Mitch Waite, who's deceased now, and I never got to meet him, but it was a big researcher in Arizona years ago. But so I was doing habituation thing, and in my mind, it was, more to bring ease to them. Okay, here's that guy again in the truck with the red shirt, and now I know that really doesn't have much bearing on it, but that was just my process.
Right.
Now, when I go out for for a week, 2 weeks, it's not like every single night something is happening.
Sure.
I might have a little couple twinkle lights one night, or I might hear a clack the next night, and then one night they all come in and it's go time, and all all hell breaks loose with the experiences and the high strangeness. But it's not a nightly thing.
Right.
So yeah, you got to put some time out there. Lately we've been doing like 2-3 nights at a time. Myself, got a little bit of health issues going on that I'm trying to get straightened out. But we'll go out for 2-3 nights, and out of those 2-3 nights, we'll have one really good night, and couple nights, and
So I have another question. You're out there so much, and you talked about like the glittering, the lights. What the orbs? Do you experience orbs, and if so, like what color and how long? Or what do you think that the orbs are? Did we lose them? Uh-oh. Are you there, Rob?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't me because of the storm coming in. I'm like, oh.
No, we're all here.
Okay.
Keith's link, everybody, for asking, is in the description of this. It's right. Just hit the description. It's right below. Yeah, he's going to probably come back.
We just literally lost him.
He's outside. He's in Arizona. And really quickly, while we're waiting for him to come back, I do want to thank T-Bone for his 5 BMR gifted memberships. He's also been a member for 12 months. Thank you for that. Super Chat's open, of course. You can become a member. And if you're new, everybody, please subscribe to me and Krista, Bigfoot, Mr. Rob, and the Blondes and Blues Paranormal Podcast. You can find us, of course, right here on your favorite channel, YouTube.
Second favorite, Blondes.
Well, yeah. Well, I said YouTube. I made it a blanket.
I was teasing. I'm just teasing.
I know. Well, I know you are, Krista. Everybody loves us. You know that. There he is. He's back. I see Mr. Keith is back with us. I'll bring him up.
Welcome back.
Keith.
Welcome back, Keith. Did I say Keith? I meant Kevin. Keith, I was looking at Keith in the chat room. Yeah.
You really cannot hear my thunder.
That's all right. All I'm going to say about I just heard that. I kind of have to chuckle about what happened because my computer just went.
It's the government.
or it could be the forest people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Keith is the wrong state.
Yeah.
That's another thing. They absolutely have the ability to mess with electronics. So
I believe that.
We'll just take that as a that's what I call a confirmed possibility of a definite maybe. Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that they always mess with our electronics? We've all heard the stories. Yeah, my video camera was 100%. My phone was 100%. My camera was 100%. And sure enough, when you come across something you think may be Bigfoot, all of a sudden everything's drained. You think it's the immense energy? Because I do believe in that quantum physics or the quantum mechanics theory that they can process all this energy and they're just like a walking magnet of energy. You think that has a lot to do with all of our equipment going kafooey?
I have no idea. I dove into quantum mechanics, quantum physics, to the point it made my brain hurt trying to understand this stuff. And the bottom, we can say yes, it's in the quantum field. We can say yes, it's in the spiritual field. We can say yes, it's quantum spirit. There's a million things we can say. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know. And so that's why I say they do what they do and they do it. Another thing that I say, it's a phrase that I coined, and it's don't let your paradigm dictate your experiences, let your experiences dictate your paradigm. And because if what we do a lot is listening to this show and going on the internet and looking up information and it's just a lot of regurgitation and people trying to I guess the easiest way to explain it is excuse me, I just inhaled a bug.
Not good.
Protein. Is yeah, that's protein. But we try to make things fit into our little world, and these things are outside of our world. Not physically, but there's so much more going on here than what we can comprehend. And so to say emphatically that it's because of quantum physics or it's because of spirituality or we can't, to be intellectually honest, myself trying to be intellectually honest with myself, I can't say how it happens. I don't know how it happens. I've had 7 gigs of music wiped off my MP3 player, not just the music, but every file. I had to throw it away because it was unusable. My audio recorder that I use all the time, I kind of got asked to not use it anymore, and so I quit taking it out. And then one trip I decided, well, I'm going to take it out, and so I had 2 nights of audio, and the audio it's on the recorder, but I can't find a computer that'll read it. As soon as I plug it into the computer, it's a ghost.
You were talking about electronics, and so we went to Brandy and I. We sometimes we go to the Land Between the Lakes, and we were over there where the alleged 1982 kill site was, and we were running. Or I had an EVP recorder, and then another friend, she also had an EVP recorder running. And we were just asking questions, that might pertain, like, did, a Dogman, massacre a family here, but whatever, with the questions we were asking. So we were both running an EVP session. Both of us had recorders, 2 different recorders, and both were on. And we were shooting video, and you could see in the video that both of them had the lights that were showing that they were on. So fast forward to the next day, I go to listen to my recorder, gone. There's nothing there. And then, so I went and I asked my friend Michelle, I was like, hey, let's listen to yours, because obviously I didn't hit the record button or something. I thought, I did something to it. And she went to turn hers on, and same thing, everything was gone. So I wholeheartedly believe what you just said about, the electronics and this and that, because something out there didn't want us to record anything.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
referring back to something you said, yes, I think people like me and you and Krista, Brandy, Tex, all the people that we all do shows together, and all the other people in this field, none of us are subject to one narrative. We just don't know anything really, and we just explore all these alternatives. So let me ask you this. It's kind of a straightforward question that I usually ask most of the time when it comes to, let's say, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Do you think physical creature, paranormal creature, spiritual, in between, both? I mean, again, it's a loaded question, but it's just a question that you can't answer. I get it. But in your experiences, do you think it's something physical more so than metaphysical?
What I think is that they don't have to abide by the same laws of physics that you and I are bound to. With that being said, I gave you the example of the one that vanished into thin air in front of me. Right. I've had one go from full solid into what people call cloaked. I hate the term cloaked because it makes people think science fiction, Star Wars, cloaking Klingons or what have you. But it is a real thing. But I watched them go from full solid into what I call a distortion or a shimmering image, because that's what it looks like when heat waves are reflecting off of the road, except it's up like that and kind of the shape of a person. But so it goes from full solid into this distortion, into this little twinkle light, and into nothing. So I watched full solid, I watched into a distortion, into a little like a little LED, and then absolutely nothing there. What the process is of that, I haven't got the slightest idea. I toy with, and this goes back to the quantum physics. The reason that we can see anything, our eyes are horrible, but the only reason we see stuff is because of refraction of light, vibrations, and frequencies. If it wasn't for vibrational frequencies and refraction and all that stuff, we wouldn't see anything. And the spectrum of light that we can see is this compared to what's out there, in the ultraviolet and into the infrared. And who knows what else could possibly exist beyond that.
Did you guys hear that? Holy crap, man. I'm telling you.
I heard it, Chris.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Getting it here, man. That one scared me.
I heard it vibrate through my earphones.
Yeah. Oh my God. Holy cow.
That's Missouri.
I know. And you're coming in September.
Yeah, send us some of that. But yeah, it's almost an unanswerable question. But what I think is going on is that they exist outside of what we can see, vibration frequencies. Dogs can see them, horses, other animals can see them. You pick them up on cameras periodically, but, we don't see them. And, so is it a possibility that they are either speeding up or slowing down their vibrational frequency to be able to come into plane to where we can see them? I've literally had one right next to me, and I couldn't see him. And the only reason I knew he was there is he touched me, and that's happened more times than I can count.
Yeah.
Hey, let me throw this at you, because I started thinking about this last month. And a lot of people say yes, as you mentioned today, the Bigfoot vanished. We've all heard, I've talked to many people that say the same thing. I remember when I had my sighting, it didn't vanish, but my perception was distorted, right? My cognizance was distorted. Do you think that, and you mentioned the word cloaking, do you think that maybe Bigfoot doesn't even cloak, or maybe they don't vanish? Do you think that maybe, however, they have the ability to distort our perception? When they're gone, they're not really gone, but they're doing something where we think they're gone.
Yep. Well, that's that's a good thought. And
Mhm.
the bottom line is I have no idea. Let
I
me
know.
let me give you another example. Another example, and I don't recall if Chris talked to you about this when he was on the show, Chris Kramer.
Mhm.
Um, so 2 years ago, it was Wayne Dillon, Chris Kramer, and myself. We were at Squatch Camp. Dark night. Excuse me. We walk out to the main road that comes into this campsite. It's kind of a little 2-track road out in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
And Chris was looking one direction. Wayne and I just happened to be looking the same direction. And Wayne says, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Absolutely." "What did you see?" "Well, I saw an individual come out of the tree line on the right, cross the road, about this tall." He goes, "Same exact thing I saw." So we all three decide we're going to walk over there, about 40, maybe 50 yards away. And, so we walk that direction and we get kind of in the area where we thought maybe this individual crossed the road. Can't feel anything, don't see anything. So we decide we're going to walk a little farther. And we probably went about another 10, 15 yards, and something grabbed my attention to my right. And I look, and I'm like, "Guys, look." And inside the tree line off of the road, it was all these twinkle lights and static discharge, and it was just kind of like the 4th of July going on.
Mhm.
And we're like going, "What the hell?" And so we're standing side by side. I got Chris standing, arms distance away from me on my right, Wayne's arm distance away from me on my left. And Wayne looks down at his feet. He says, "Look down at my feet. I got these little green lights all around my feet." We look down, and he had these lights down by his feet. He says, "I'm going to walk out. I'm going to walk into the forest." And so he takes about 2 steps, maybe 2.5. And as far as my vision, he went poof. He vanished. Wayne,
Oh.
Wayne, Wayne, Wayne. And he
Jeez.
goes, "What?" And I go, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yes, I'm fine. I can't see you. I'm right here." Chris says, "I see him just fine." I lean over to where Chris is at. I can see him. I lean back. He's gone. I can see the trees behind him, but I can't see Wayne. So I dragged Chris over, and he wasn't happy about that, but I dragged him over. I said, "Look." He goes, "Oh my God, he's gone." And so then Wayne stepped back out. We we are still discussing that episode. How did that happen? What was going on?
Mhm.
Um, the best that we can hypothesize is that when this individual came across the road, whatever the reason being, there was some residual energy from something, and that Wayne had stepped. We don't know. Wayne stepped into a portal and he walked off, and no, none of us will say that. What we will say is he was there, but we couldn't see him from my
Sure.
vantage point. Had
Wow.
I been standing where Chris was, and it was just that exact position where I was at, that I was able to watch him vanish. How it
Mhm.
happened, I don't know. But yeah, we still are scratching our heads
Mhm.
on that one.
Chris and I can attest to this. That does happen. She and I have seen, and some of our other friends have seen video of people vanishing into portals or cubes. You know that, Chris, and
Yep.
they have come right back out. Could not explain, but we would see they disappeared literally on thermal. We see them go into something and come out. Right? Remember that, Krista?
Oh yeah.
Very. So we just
Yep.
don't know.
You know.
And it brings up the other question: do these cryptids travel through portals? They come from different dimensions or realms and things, and again, we don't have the answers. And I really appreciate how you've answered all these questions with "I
Mhm.
don't know," because guess what? That's what I kind of like to hear, because we don't know.
Mhm.
But I think the things you say are sound. I've heard them, and I agree with a lot of things you said tonight. You've had a
Yep.
lot of great experiences you shared with us tonight. And unfortunately, as my headphones fall off my head, Unfortunately, I can't ask you the question, what's the scariest thing that ever happened to you? Because, with you, you've had great experiences. But let me ask you, because our audience says,
Hold on.
okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. The scariest thing that's happened to me was 2018. I decided I am going to step up my game and show them how much I trust them.
Okay.
I went to Squatch camp. All I had was my cot and 2 sleeping bags. This was in March of 2018 at 7,600 feet. It was cold. It was very cold. Had 1 sleeping bag stuffed in the other. Had my cot sitting on a rug, um, so I wouldn't put my bare feet or my socks, into the dirt. I went to sleep. Didn't have much had a little bit of activity, but not much. Went to sleep, and just before sunup, I got paralyzed into my sleeping bag. It felt like somebody had pinched the head of the sleeping bag closed. Now, I am not saying I got lifted in the air. The sensation that I had was just like being in a helicopter. I up and it felt like they were running through the forest with me about 40 miles an hour, except I wasn't bouncing. It was just a smooth glide. And I can remember, I was thinking, Indy, put me down. Indy, put me down. Indy, put me down. I don't like this.
Wow.
And then I feel like when a helicopter lands, I feel that thud. And I could hear him breathing outside. I could hear him walking away. And I wanted to take my head out of the sleeping bag, but I was too terrified. I was not mentally prepared for that experience. Sure. Now, maybe so, but at that point in time, I was not mentally prepared for that, and it took me a little while to get over that. Did he lift me up in the air, and did he run through the forest with me? I can't answer that. I can just tell you what the sensation was. And the other thing I can tell you is the center leg on my cot was off by about a half an inch from where it was. You can see the indentation in the rug that it was sitting on.
Yeah. Wow. So I have a question to ask you.
That's the one, but go ahead.
So we were told to ask you about the Power Ranger pillowcase.
Love you, Rob. Okay, yeah, I used to live 126 miles away from these areas, and lived really close to where Rob is at, and get real anxious to get up on the mountain, and a lot of times it's just a spur of the moment. It's like, hey, call my wife. Hey, I know you're at work, but I'm heading up in the mountains. I'll be back in a week and a half. Boom, and throw everything in the truck and take off. Forgot my pillow. Rob's gonna come up, and so I go out and I call him and I say, "Hey, Rob, I know you're coming up. If I have my wife bring the pillow over, will you bring it up to me? I've got a bad neck and I have to use a feather pillow." And Rob says, "Yeah, we'll get you the pillow." Well, apparently he had called my wife, or however it turned out. They just brought me a pillow and with a Power Ranger pillowcase, and I absolutely loved it. It was beautiful. These guys I work with, man, I tell you what.
Well, yeah, but we all do this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a living, but we all do these things, and we do have characters as friends. Let me ask you, we didn't get into this. How did your group, thank you to Tex, thank you to Mickey, thank you to T-Bone for all your generosity tonight. The Arizona 4, now, is this these guys you've known your whole life? How'd you guys form your little, you have a group on Facebook, by the way, everybody can check it out, and I'll get to that at the end of the show. How do they formulate? And now, I have to imagine you're all not like-minded when it comes to certain aspects of Bigfoot. That'd be kind of
we
boring.
are all we are all uniquely different. But with that being said, just a fantastic group of guys. I mean, they're my brothers. I don't use that term lightly. I love them, and there's nothing I won't do for them. So how it started, I was pretty much solo mission. I had another guy that was with the BFRO, that would come out with me periodically. So when I say periodically, I'm out for 2 weeks. He may come and spend a night or two with me. So, but most of this is solo mission. Sitting out in the forest all by myself. Well, my primary area, Squatch Camp, gets closed down because they're supposed to do some logging. Long story. So I find another area to go to, and so I spend a lot of time at that place that I call Coyote Camp. And fairly close to Coyote Camp is another camp area that I was like, I gotta spend some time here. So me and my grandson, we go to what we call Hilltop now. We go there, and there's other campers there, and I'm like going, oh great. And I'm like, well, the forest is free, and if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen whether they're here or not. So, we'll just make the best of it. And then my buddy showed up, and we walked over to talk to these guys, and, how long you been camping here? Oh, I've been camping here for 25 years, and like, well, you ever have anything weird happen? What, like Bigfoot or UFOs? And yeah, like Bigfoot. Nope, can't say that I ever had anything. And him and his wife are looking at us like we're we need to get out of here. These guys are batshit crazy, and so we're talking to them as they're packing up leaving, because they were leaving. And my buddy says, well, a lot of stuff they do is real subtle, like maybe you came out and found a flower stuck in the seat of your quad. And the fact that he even said that, kind of tripped me out a little bit, because he's never said anything like that to somebody before. But the look that these, this husband and wife, which is Rob and his beautiful better half. Hi, Kathy. I don't have a cigarette. I quit smoking. Long story. But so I guess their conversation all the way back to the Phoenix metro area was one of how the hell did they possibly know about the flower in the seat. And how Rob says is that he always thought it was his sons always said no, it wasn't us. So that was just the little bait. And so he came out on another trip and got to have some experiences. And it's kind of the same thing with Wayne. He got in contact with us. I don't remember who it was he contacted first, but he started coming out. And then Chris and I, we'd been friends for a while on a different on a Facebook page, and he had moved to Arizona, and he asked if he could go out on a trip with me. And like, yeah, I don't care. I can't promise you anything's going to happen, but what I can promise you is I've never been out and not had something happen. And so Chris came out, and he got the full Monty on that trip. On a scale of 1 to 10, that trip was a 12. And so we just kind of morphed into this. We lost one, that the guy that I first started with, just because of some different ideas. But he's a great guy, and I love him to death. And but now it's just the four of us, and so here we are, the Arizona 4, moving forward.
I see my buddies in the background. I haven't seen my buddy Krista in a little bit, my little kitty cat.
See, I'll tell you what. So the family went out of town on Friday, right? Yeah. So I stayed back Friday night, and I left on Saturday morning. So the cat was home. I leave plenty of food and the whole 9 yards, food and water for her. And I came back yesterday. Oh my God, she hasn't left my side, and she's so loving right now. I think she misses Olivia.
Yeah.
And she literally kept like hitting on my leg. So I'm like, okay, just come on, I'll hold you. And
right.
I haven't seen it, but she's been just lovey-dovey with me. So anyway, Amanda, her name is Stella. So
Stella.
Well, I had a cat like that for 18 and a half years.
Wow.
His name was Patriot. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Oh,
he's
cool.
buried in the backyard now, but he was.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I had two Siamese cats. I don't know what happened to them, but well, because when I split up with the ex, she got them, and they hated her. They loved me, but she got them.
Yeah.
Anyways, I appreciate the show so far. I mean, now we got about 8.5 minutes to go. Is there anything, Kevin, that you like to share to the audience regarding what you're all about? I mean, you've done a fantastic show. What's one of the things that you, with your experiences out in the field, that you would like to tell people about and share that maybe we haven't heard about before?
Yeah, I'll give you a good one, and I'm gonna pull up a picture while I'm talking about it. Because I've talked about my grandkids,
Sure.
Experiences that they've had, and this just kind of lends towards why I feel the way about them that I do. But we're at Squatch camp, and he was 4 years old at the time, and he's had experiences with him before, like when he was 2 years old. My son's holding him, and we're standing out in the dark, and so my son's holding him. My grandson, he looks at me and he looks at his dad, and then he does this, and then he looks back at his dad and looks back at me like, that's daddy and papa, and they're big, but what's this guy? And and it was just really interesting to watch, and there's a lot more to it, but he's had this connection also with them. And so let's see how well that shows up. That's gifts that they made for my grandson.
That's cool. Very cool.
Sweet, man.
Wow.
Hey, do me a favor, send it to my Facebook or my messenger later. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that's those are gifts that they made for my grandson.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
With what you've talked about today, I mean,
am I comfortable leaving my grandson out there?
Well, the answer obviously is the obvious answer you said earlier in the show is yes, and I tell you what, today's show, hey, listen, I could go both ways when it comes to Bigfoot, good and bad, in between. But today was such a great show because of all the shows I've done. Again, I will say I love them all, but what I love about this show with you today is it's a very enlightening show when it comes to the forest people. Today, after today's show, the forest people, because everything that you've come across, your grandchildren, your experiences, it puts a nice, it enlightens it. It makes it not scary, not the scary forest giant, right? And I think what you did today, I think it enhances that. And I never think that, first of all, I will say this. I never thought Bigfoot was bad to begin with. And like we talked earlier, we all have different experiences in life with any walk of anything that we do. Ghost, paranormal, dogman, Bigfoot, human beings, it don't matter. But when you came across, you're very fortunate. And I think you have a great story to tell. And I'm really appreciative of you coming on tonight.
Yep.
Well, happy to be here, and thank you for having me. And anytime you want me back on, just let me know. I've got a gazillion. I mean, we just barely scratched the surface.
Well, that's great because we'll definitely do follow-ups with you, and of course, I know my partner will be getting a hold of you as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We share great guests.
Yep. And honestly, like one of your partners is, you talked about Chris Kramer. He's a great guy. He's been on our show a couple times, and he's been on here. So he's a good guy.
In fact, Chris was on Krista's show, then she was on my show, and I think you were in the chat room saying some things, and I think I was watching. As always, I'm trying to read the chat, listening to Chris at the time. I said, "Send me an email," and I think you did. And that's how I got contact with you. If that's how it went down, I forget, or maybe Chris just gave me your number. I don't know. But regardless, I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? Facebook, social media, whatever you want to talk about before we close out.
All right. Well, I have my channel, Arizona Squatch, but I'm not doing much with that right now.
Okay.
But it's a great source of archives of, I mean, you go all the way back to when I first started doing this in 2017 and just see the progression of, of how all this went. And, so the Arizona Squatch YouTube channel, we've started the Arizona 4 because this has now moved into a us thing instead of a me thing. And, so that, so we as a collective group, we're trying to bring our experiences out to the forefront. And the biggest thing, is, for me personally, is I want people to engage thought process. I want them to, the regurgitation of information is just over and over and over, but just start thinking, step outside of the box, and try and put some clear thought, methodically into, what possibly this whole thing could be. And that's, where the experiences that we have, and we put that information out, we share our experiences. If you're going to go to my channel or our channel, the Arizona 4, or to our Facebook group, the AZ4, looking for evidence and proof, you're barking up the wrong tree. We're not about giving, if we come across something, a good structure, I'll put that up. But this is more about what we're experiencing. And, one of the things we're doing is doing fireside chats in the morning and discussing, and, so we're just trying to open this up and to get the general population to, to just start thinking.
Sure.
No, I do like that, because I personally, I'd rather just sit around and have a fireside chat and just talk about the subject matter. I don't need to see X structures or pictures. I'm kind of done with that. I like talking to the people like we did today, because it was very rewarding, right, Krista?
Absolutely.
And I do want to thank T-Bone.
Yeah, well,
T-Bone again, Mickey G, and Tex for your awesome contributions tonight. Thank you, guys. And if did I miss one, Krista, or no? We're good. No, I got him.
Yeah, you got him.
I'm sorry. He has one other thing you wanted to say before I cut you off, Kevin.
No, I'm good. Yeah,
You're good. Well, you are good. This was a great show, fantastic show. Thanks everybody for coming on in. Please subscribe to Bigfoot michiganrob, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, Texas Punch Front Porch. Kevin's show is posted in the links. Monica, Paranormal Paul, and Truth or Tinfoil as well. Thank you so much. Hit that like button on the way out. Please hit the like button on your way out. It does help improve the algorithm and promote the show.
Yep.
So, with that being said, I will. Briefly though, what do you have coming up, Krista? Today is Tuesday. What you got going on Thursday?
So Thursday, I will be out of town again, but I believe isn't it you and Brandy?
I have not contacted Brandy, but she's got my number.
You and Brandy, and the guest is Barb Hartman. Remember, we talked about this.
Well, I guess we did.
We did.
Yeah,
so,
I doubt it though. I don't think we did.
Yeah. So you won't see me on Thursday or Friday this week, but you will see Rob again.
I guess. Yeah. Well, you sold that one pretty good. I knew never told me that. Just
We didn't have that
kidding.
conversation.
I just remembered just now, in fact.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you on the flip side. We're out.
See y'all.
Crossing Realms Conference is coming this September 19th and 20th to the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Tickets to this landmark event are on sale right now at Eventbrite. The powerful speaker lineup will cover topics from Bigfoot, UFOs, and aliens, so you will not want to miss attending this amazing 2-day inaugural event. Again, that's the Crossing Realms Conference, this September 19th and 20th at the Eagleton Civic Center in Richmond, Missouri. Please mark your calendar and get your tickets before they vanish.